This is a special project. There's 7 acres of regeneration, I guess. I don't really know even what they call this project.
What do you call this
Some
project?
kind of, it was developed in a penal colony on the Pitcairn Islands. The idea of a project like this is to consider regeneration. All right, now, this forest was part of the clear cut. All of this forest around us here was part of the clear cut 25 years ago. It was a commercial clear cut, which means that there are a few bigger trees that were not good enough to take when they harvested that are still here. So you'll see a hemlock tree that might be 18, 20 inches in diameter, or a white pine, or something that they didn't want, but all the hardwoods were taken out. All right. So basically what this hopes to accomplish is releasing oak trees. Now, this kind of project, I'm not a good forester for explaining this because I don't think it's a good thing. And I have to be honest about that.
This wasn't your idea?
No, it was not.
I think
No, this is a USDA program. When a program like that is described, it is described very well. We want to have practices that encourage forest types that are difficult to regenerate, such as oak. So if we can have a program that makes good things happen to oak stands, that's what the purpose of the program is. All right. The limitation is relating to time. If you look at any of the white oak already, now this was just, the work was just completed. And already all of the white oaks are sprouting apicormic branches. All right, so the first question that I have is why do we take a stand that has a significant number of white oaks and release the white oak to the point where we destroy them? Because the quality of these white oaks will never be okay with the apicormic sprouting.
Would you say more about that? Why is that going to retard their...
Well, okay, the branches, as those branches develop, every branch is a defect in that tree. So when the lumber is cut from that tree, there will be significant defects in that lumber. Now, we can grow volume, but we can't grow quality. So my concern is the quality of oaks. We have to be more careful and more specific about helping oaks. All right, so the apicormic sprouting tells me that this is too open for oaks. And now those oaks are not going to die, they're just going to grow branches, and those branches will be defects and the quality will go down. Yeah.
Is the blue marks? I'm sorry. just the trees they wanted to root?
Yes, yes. The blue marks, I marked the blue. I mean, I had the choice of the chance to mark what trees to keep. So I have kept the best trees. The problem is I was not able to keep the forest.
Yeah. Do you think if you'd waited till the oak trees were bigger, maybe 6 inches in diameter, and then you thinned it to this extent, would they have been big enough that you may not have gotten the apicorn sprouting if they'd been a little more mature?
In my experience, no forest can handle this kind of thinning.
Okay.
All right. Removing a third of the forest is the maximum you ever would want to remove in a forest.
What did you say you removed here? What percent?
All right. Well, basically, you're keeping about 35 trees per acre in a stand of nearly 1,000.
Wow.
So what was here? What was removed from this stand?
Mostly what was removed would be soft maples. Let's talk about the clear-cut origin of this stand first. This is very complex, what we're talking about now. This is the most, that's why I say this property is the best laboratory going that I'm aware of for understanding what happens with the intensity of harvest. Okay, now this is not a harvest at this point, but the origin of this stand was a harvest. It was a clear cut where everything commercially was removed, and the response to that clear cut was abundant sprouting. Because there were so many oaks in this stand, oak sprouts very quickly and easily. So if you harvest oaks to a density below 85 square feet per acre, that's at 100 square feet per acre, you feel like you're walking through a forest. You love it. Okay. At 85, you're beginning to think maybe they cut this a little bit too hard. All right, if you cut it to 85 square feet of basal area, then sprouts will occur on the stumps that were cut. Those sprouts will be numerous. They may be anywhere from 1 sprout to 11 or 12 sprouts coming from that oak stump. Shortly after the sprouts begin, competition among those sprouts on that same stump begin to take place. And the winner is the least desirable sprout. And the reason for that is the winner will have a low fork and 2 or 3 tops and more leaves than the competition. All right, so without a project like this, just thinking about the clear-cut situation, where we have gone through, and I say we, I have done a lot of the marking, but where they have done the work in the stand, we are removing a third of the stems and releasing the best quality sprout from that stump. And that's not ever, I shouldn't say not ever, but I don't remember ever seeing one, The biggest is hardly ever the best. But the biggest is going to win. So when you have a severe cut like this, you absolutely have to plan on doing TSI twice.
Easy.
Just the numbers has nothing to do with selecting species or anything like that. Just the numbers of trees will dictate doing TSI twice. All right. Now, the second time that you're doing TSI, you're beginning to work with the species that you want. But the first time is just a mechanical thing where you're removing a third of the stand and releasing the best potential stems.
Is that best potential from your point of view or from the growth's point of view? But your point of view
No,
is you want the best stem to become a timber tree as opposed to the most vigorous stem that won't grow.
Okay. I would make exceptions if I was had a sprout in a hedgerow, for example, and I was trying to grow acorns. I would have no problem whatsoever leaving that tree with a fork in order to have acorns sooner and more abundant. But in the forest, that's not the kind of tree you want, generally. But in all management, I would really like to have you look at trees to that, as close as that. You're making decisions on the basis of trees to make a forest. And the purpose of your trees may be very different from one part of a forest to another. But every time you look at a tree, you're making a decision based on that tree and how you expect to use it. So with, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but I think the first work that you did in the clear cut area was to go through and take out all the birch?
Yeah, a lot of the maples, the groups, we cut out a lot of stuff like that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking when a forest is clear cut, it's essentially starting over, but not completely over. It's not like going back all the way to an agricultural field that was abandoned. It still has a lot of the characteristics of a forest, such as the mycorrhizae that's going to live for a while if the forest can regenerate quickly enough. And all those things are taking place. Well, in an area where there's a lot of hemlock taken out, it's kind of interesting. Clear-cut hemlock will result in yellow birch coming in. Abundant. Not hemlock, it's yellow birch is going to come into that. Well, in every situation, the forest is predictable, and the more we know about it, the better results we're going to be satisfied with. I really like what is happening on this property with the clear cut, because the TSI work is directed toward releasing the best oak. So at this elevation, we have a band of oak. The further downhill you get, the more red maple and aspen, and very few oak. So we can't, if we want to favor oak regeneration,
With that,
we have to work where there's a seed source. So the oak regeneration is going to be here. Now, to talk about this legitimately, we're talking regeneration. What we're looking at here is not what this is about. It's what we want it to be. We want these trees to drop acorns and grow oak. Okay, that's regeneration. Yes.
How old do they have to hit or to be in order for that to happen?
Some of these will produce some acorns. Most of the red oak will begin to have acorns at about 15, age 15, and these are 25. So we're starting to get acorns on some of these, but that will increase. By the time these trees are 40, they will be producing abundantly.
It's not so much the size.
It would be, yeah.
Do you think allowing controlled burns, would that be beneficial to the oak regeneration? Would that be helpful to it, or your site not really?
Control burns is most effective where we have a buildup of organic material, particularly oak leaves. Acorns will lie on a bed of oak leaves, and they will die. They will desiccate. They might sprout, but they can't go anywhere. So burning can be helpful, but to burn through this now would be, at the very best, you would get rid of 1 year's growth of grass, and that's not a factor at all in oak regeneration.
No. And with the brush, there's probably too much fuel on the ground.
Yeah, we can. You want a chip project? He's already to fire me now. I would not expect a project like this, under these conditions, to ever be desirable for a burn. The burn projects usually would relate to very large trees, abundant leaf fall over several years. That's what's more effective.
Okay.
Yes.
do you think we'd see similar results after a clear cut now that with the heavier deer populations to what you saw 25 years ago here?
I personally feel that we pick on the deer way too much. Deer have to eat something, and they will be selective, and they do like oak, but if I think part of the reason that we don't have enough regeneration in the forest, and I don't quote me on this, because my observation, I'm not a researcher, but I really think most of what we say about deer is biased. Everybody hates deer from the standpoint of eating up. Let me summarize it by saying this. I believe that we abuse our forests to the maximum and blame deer.
In our Zone 8R, Yates County, the highest take in the state, the reported take was 14.1 bucks and 14.1 does per square mile. Deer, so that's obviously not the density here. But in our area, they're a problem.
And they can be a problem, but in some deer research areas, Uh, it's amazing the levels of populations that they work with and still are able to regenerate. It just depends on how you want to do it. And anytime we have a plant, whether we plant it or whether we just want it, anything that's going to attack that we hate. And your yard is no exception. Everything in your yard, you want it. That's why you put it there. So I'm saying we have to plan for food for the deer in order to have, why is this an oak forest? The deer population was very high. Interesting, we'll look at an exposure here on the property afterwards. The property, the managed forest within the exposure is no different from outside the exposure.
On the right side.
Now, I'm not saying that thing is standard, but if there's an abundance of food, that's going to always be the case. If there's not an abundance of food, so what affects that? My experience is density of the forest. So if we have a forest, let's say I want to grow sugar maple. Sugar maple is a great deer food, great deer food. If I want to grow sugar maple, what's the best density for growing sugar maple?
What do you want to use it?
You're right on, but no, I mean for regenerating sugar maple. I want to regenerate sugar maple. What's the best density? Okay. Research ignores that question. And I say it's absolutely key to forest management. We should know from research the very best density of a forest for every single commercial species. And we don't know any of them. My experience is that at 120 square feet of basal area, I get the best regeneration of sugar maple. That's not scientific research, it's just observation from many, many stands of sugar maple that I manage.
I knew that because you told me that last month.
All right, so I'm saying that if we want to regenerate oak, 120 is not a good density for red oak in my experience. If I am at 100 to 85, 100 square feet of basal area to a range of 85, I get the most oak regeneration. All right, now I'm saying that from my observation, it doesn't really matter. The deer are not the primary cause of not making that work. Now, I'm not saying they're not a factor. They are a factor. But I have never been able to exclude regeneration by paying attention to density as the most important factor in management.
In 40 years on my old farm, we actually drove around it on a Kubota 10 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. And the only oak seedling that I ever saw get over this high without being browsed was under the high fence fence. And everything else was, and that, was a farm that was 50% hay, pasture, 50% oats.
And what was the density of the forest?
it was probably in your numbers. But I mean, I just never
I'm
saw
not
an
saying that-
ungrazed.
I'm
I
not
never saw an
disagreeing.
ungrazed. I saw seedlings, but I never saw one get over this high because they were all grazed off.
Right, and that's what they're supposed to eat.
Just
I
not
mean,
all of them.
if there's nothing, well, if we don't provide for them to have something to eat, then they're going to eat whatever's available. And I
Doesn't
don't
their
think they're-
diet change seasonally though? I mean,
I didn't get that right.
I said, doesn't their diet change seasonally?
Well, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're out grazing the clover one time, and then they'll, move back in the woods for acorns, and how do you feed them?
Well, deer are opportunists, of course. I mean, they're going to eat what is available at this time. Interesting. Just recently, I started cutting off ash seedlings to see what effect it would have on deer. And deer don't really like ash, but it's interesting that all of the sprouts from those ash, every single one was eaten. Now, I only did like 100 trees, but every single one was eaten. The sprouts were eaten. And I was just providing food. And ash would not be considered a deer food, but it was, and they took advantage of it.
At a particular stage of growth, they like that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, once it goes through the growing season, then they won't eat it. But if you were brush hogging a meadow that had a high percentage of ash seedlings, that would be prime deer food. And I'm saying that it's way more complex than we can't make simple solutions because we have to look at the whole forest. And I'm willing to bet, I don't know your properties, but I'm willing to bet that if you have more than 5 acres, you probably have 5 or 6 different forests. It's amazing. It doesn't take much to change a little bit into a new forest.
Bruce, what is the basal area of this?
I don't think you can even measure it. No, this, it's too low.
How low's too low?
40, 50%?
Well, when trees are this size, basal area would not be the measure that you would use to analyze it. If you on a basal area percentage, it's probably 10. Very low, very low.
So does this comply with 480A density or not? This level of thing?
This eventually it would. I mean, when these are mature, yeah.
Yeah, but at the moment, no.
Yeah. Well, at the moment, you can't measure the basal area.
Isn't that based on
trees
the
this
number
size.
of trees per acre, not even a DPH on that?
I think
I think it
so.
is,
I
because
think it's,
It's
when
very
you
young.
plant trees, you have to have so many new trees
Yeah,
per
you have to
acre.
have 500 trees per acre.
Is this considered a clear cut?
This is part of the clear cut.
It's called a clear cut, even though
Well, this recent harvest probably wouldn't be a clear.
the initial.
Well, it's in it.
This area right here, no, this was clear cut 25 years ago, and the regeneration decision area was here because of the oak.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what was the rationale for the EQIP or USDA program to do this?
yes,
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what is the federal government? Why did they think this is the right thing?
Why is it that there's a
You're asking me?
It was non-foresters making the
No, that is a rhetorical question. No, part of the question is that I don't think we have any satisfactory answers for yet is how do we regenerate a forest? And in my opinion, which discount this, in my opinion, before we ask that question, we should ask what forest needs to be regenerated. We should not just go blindly forward saying that every forest in New York needs to be regenerated. I would say among the 3,000 different clients that I have over 50 years, I would say I could only identify one forest that absolutely needed to be regenerated. It's not a universal problem. We're making it so, but this is creating more of a problem than a solution.
But isn't the part of the situation that passing to talk about how difficult it is to regenerate oak? And therefore, as a government stepping in trying to boost the regeneration of oak. I think that's the rationale for the program. Because oak is in immediate light on where they're impeded by intolerance when you cut with their level, or they'll get impeded by the state hazard, as you are saying, visitors or even forested city level. Saying they're trying to find solutions.
Yeah, but they're not talking about density.
Well, they aren't, but most of our carbon has is the benefit that I've had of walking my land with you. And I'm serious about that because to follow the teachings has been suggested to me by other people, I would never be likely to be successful at regenerating oak. And it's why I've come a long ways to hear you talk.
Well, you'll be sorry. No, but yes.
Just a quick technical question. Everything cut is on the ground. Does it hurt to, I mean, that takes a lot of time. If you get stuff leaning and you're not going to be in the woods, does it hurt to leave that stuff up in the trees that you already cut down?
It doesn't, but there's no right way to do this level of cutting. And I doubt on this property you will ever see this level of cutting again. Is that your name, man? No,
but it doesn't hurt the residual trees, that dead stuff leaning up against it.
No, it does not. And one of the practices that's kind of interesting, a lot of people who are trying to grow seedling or sprouts for deer food will clear a 2-acre patch, cut everything in that 2-acre patch, and then let it grow up. Well, the problem that if there's a lot of debris on the ground, the deer are lazy. They're going to walk on this mowed trail around this. They're not going to go through this. Maybe later this winter they might poke in a little bit and pick out something, but that's not going to be what we anticipate for the deer. I talk with my deer all the time, and we have pretty good understanding. And just to show you how weird I really am, I had a plant in my flower garden that was ready to bloom, and I save all the jewelweed. I don't weed jewelweed ever. I save it for the hummingbirds. Well, the jewelweed had come up and it was pretty well blocking all my plants. So I was talking with the deer about, you know, they're supposed to eat that jewelweed. They're welcome to it. It's my garden, and that's the part of my garden that they're allowed to have. I explained that to them, and well, after I had this conversation, I could not believe it. The next morning, I went out, and my plant that was ready to bloom was absolutely gorgeous. They had cut off all of the jewelweed all the way around it, like they had a weed whacker.
You sure your wife didn't sneak out there?
I couldn't believe it. So, that's just an aside. But my point is that nobody is right, but we need some basic information that is reliable. And I think we have, particularly in New York State, I'll put it on the record, as far as I'm concerned, New York State, to say that 70% of the forests of New York State are not regenerating is baloney. I don't see it. And then you ask the question, well, what is regeneration? How much is needed? When I was in college, they told me we needed 5,000 to 10,000 seedlings per acre for that to regenerate. Well, that means that there's nothing to regenerating because there's no place that has anything like that I've ever seen. But I'm saying I'm perfectly happy if I can get 100. It's enough. I mean, when you think about an acre of good forest, vigorous forest, can be managed with 160 trees. Why do we need to talk about 10,000? And why is anything less than 10,000 a failure? I don't understand all of the rhetoric that is going on and I realize I'm an old crotchety forester, but I don't see the support for it. And honestly, I would say if any of you are discouraged by anything that I've said, I would encourage you to get out some loppers, go for a walk in your forest, and every time you see something that you like, release it. You will feel good about it. You will become an expert at finding good things. And you will be able to participate in the growth of your forest. And it is very, very rewarding. And so it's perfectly okay that you can discount everything that I have said, but you cannot discount your participation in your woodlands. And the more you participate, the more you're going to understand it. And it's exciting. And I mean, I have honestly come to conclude that I'm not concerned about the deer, at least any place where I have been on the southern tip. And I've worked in about 3,000 different woodlots. It's not an idle observation. I try to look at the forest. I used to think that my learning curve was a straight line up. And it hasn't changed.